everyone, this is Ashby from Positivity Peddler, and I'm just doing a follow-up video from the previous one where we made our custom-made silicone molds. So I wanted to give it a try, see if the resin actually works with it, if it sticks to it, if it's able to be demolded easily, and if it stands up after usage. So the things that we're going to need for this video are gloves, a 2-part epoxy resin. We've got the resin and the hardener. I have a bottle of the release spray, but we're not going to use it for this video. I just put it out there so I could mention specifically that we're not going to use it. I want to see how well the resin is released from the mold, so that would kind of defeat the purpose. I also have some dried flowers and some decorations that we'll use for a couple of these to see how well it sticks together. And we've got our setup for the resin and a timer, plus our stir sticks. Now, if you're sensitive to smells, you might want to wear a mask or a respirator because the smell of the resin can be a little bit irritating to some people. With our last video, we made our molds out of cornstarch and silicone, 100% silicone 1, and soap and water with 100% silicone 1 to see which one would be the best and easiest way to make a resin mold. I've been tired of using plastic molds because they look like this, and they're not very flexible, and the resin tends to stick to them without using that spray. So to get started, we're going to have to get our resin mixed together. With this resin, we mix 2 equal parts of the resin and the hardener. For this one, I've got about a tablespoon. You can see I'm just using these measuring cups to be able to see how much I've got. And then we're going to mix them together in equal parts. Different types of resin have different mixing times. So you might have to stir them differently, or they might be volume-based measurements versus just this type of measurement. So sometimes you'll need a scale, but for this type, I don't need the scale to measure the amount. And what we're going to do, I got a little bit larger of a cup for this first part of the resin because it's quite a bit. And we're going to pour the resin in here. Now this one's the hardener. And we're going to mix that in there too. Again, make sure that you scrape the sides. Now that we've got it mixed together in here, we're going to stir. And this is where our timer comes in. For this type of resin, we need to stir for 1 minute, and then we switch containers, and then we're going to stir for another minute. So go ahead and hit start. And stir, stir, stir. Now that we've got it stirred it for a minute, and of course you want to make sure that you're scraping the sides when you stir to get all the mixture mixed together, we're going to pour it into a second cup for another mix minute. So Make sure you scrape the sides out. And the cups that I'm using for this are just little Dixie cups. You can use any kind. The brand that I have isn't the Dixie brand, it's just the dollar store one. But if you've got Dixie cups laying around, that'll work. Really any kind of little cup that you don't care about. Some types of resin you'll have to be careful because these little cups have a waxing or a waxed surface on the inside of them. And that might not work with the type of resin that you've got. So if you're having problems with it setting up, that might be something to check out. Alright, so I've got all the resin out of this cup. We'll set that aside. And then we're going to start our timer again for just 1 more minute while we mix this up. And we're going to do the same thing for the other resin, but I'm not going to do this small batch yet because that one's going to be a colored one for my Dragonfly wings. One of my molds is a little Dragonfly. Alright, now this is what it looks like. And then we're going to pour straight into these molds. Pour first into the cornstarch seashell silicone mold. And we're just going to do some clear for this one. Guys, you might notice that I'm not wearing the gloves. That's just because I've been doing this for quite some time, but I do recommend the gloves in case you don't want to get dirty. The resin really sticks to your fingers. It's hard to get off. If you do happen to get the resin on your fingers while you're working on a craft like this, you can use warm soap and water at first, and that might help. But you can also use fingernail polish remover or rubbing alcohol. Seems to help to get it off. If you have sensitive hands, though, I would be really careful and make sure you wear gloves. Let's pour the second one. I'm really excited to see how this turns out. Okay. That one's done. Mold number 1 done and out of the way. We're going to do the key, which is mold number 4. It just takes a little bit. While you're pouring this, make sure that you don't have any bubbles showing in there if at all possible. And then we're going to do mold number 5, which was just a rock. This is the mold that I was concerned the most about because by the time I had been able to put the items into that cornstarch mold, it seemed to have set up quite a bit already. So I'm not sure if it'll hold the resin in very well. Looks like it's doing okay though. Now the next thing that we're going to do, we have to be quick because this resin, it doesn't stay for very long. We need to use it quickly. So I need to make my circle, and I brought some clay and some flowers because the purpose of this mold in particular was because I like to do jewelry with dried flowers. And I just have some regular old ones that I haven't, they don't have much color. I wasn't really trying super hard for these ones because this is just a practice mold. I'm going to take this clay, just a little bit of it inside the mold so that we've got that shape. And I only want half of it. So I'm only going to do half of the circle. Something nice about this is that we'll also be able to see how well the clay demolds from this silicone mold. So if you look in there, guys, I just have it about halfway. And I'm going to use a stick just to make some grooves so that the resin has something to stick to versus a smooth surface. Just like that. We're going to do the same thing with both molds. I'm going to use a little bit less in this mold because I want to also try some dried flowers. And this clay that I'm using is just air dry clay. Got it at Hobby Lobby. It was actually pretty cheap for a big box of it. I think it was like $10. So if you like clay stuff, this one's pretty fun. I'm going to use my orange flower petals. I'm going to stick that in there. And then just a little white flower right there. Put it in front of the orange flower petal so it stands out really nicely. And then now we'll go ahead and pour the resin in there. Now that I got my flowers, because I gotta say that this mold, this circle mold, is the one that I'm the most excited about. Because I can't wait to see how it looks with the flowers in it. You want to make sure that you cover this clay with the resin also. Now we've got kind of an overpour, but we'll see how it turns out. Now my last mold that I have to fill is my Dragonfly, and I wanted to do a couple colors in there along with the clear. So I made a separate batch of resin, just a really tiny amount because I'm not going to use much. And this one's going to be the same thing, guys. We're just mixing them together. But for this one, I'm going to use the same containers because it's such a small amount. So we'll pour the regular resin using our second stir stick. If you can help it, use a separate stir stick and separate cups for a second resin pour, because the other resin that we had already mixed together is probably starting to get tacky by now, and it's no longer in a good mixable, pourable state. We got one more mixing container. And the purpose of pouring it into a different container when you do the second mix is to get the air bubbles out. So it's important to try to use that extra container if you've got it. Alright, now that we've got it all mixed, You see we've got still kind of a little bit of bubbles in there. Definitely a lot less than when we did our first mix. And with this one I brought green food coloring. Food coloring is of course optional, but without it you'll have just clear resin. And with this food coloring you don't need very much at all. Just 1 drop will probably do. People use different things to be able to put color into the resin. There's powders, there's alcohol ink. Food color is just a really cheap way to be able to put it in there. And of course they all look different when you add them, so they serve different purposes. In the future I'm going to do a video with the alcohol ink because I think that's a really cool way to add color. That's another video. I've got this green. It's a really pretty shade of green. Just real light because I only did 1 drop of the color. And I'm going to use, because these molds are really shallow, I don't have a lot of space for the resin to be. So I'm just going to use this stir stick, the same stir stick that I've been using, to dab a little bit of this colored resin into where the wings are at. Just it's scooped up, and you see how it just kind of drips off the edge of the stick? That's what we're going to do to the wings. All the wings filled up. Perfect. I got my wings filled, and I definitely made way too much resin for that, but that's okay. I really try hard not to waste the resin, but sometimes it's unavoidable. I'm going to use clear for the rest of the body. Real careful pour. Make sure you get it all the way to the edges. If you're having a hard time making the resin reach the edges, that's another spot where your stir stick will come in handy. You can just, not too much there. You can just push it. Perfect. Now we have to wait. So it takes about 24 hours for this resin to set. So we'll have to come back in the morning and we'll double check, see how it comes out of the mold, see what it looks like, what the quality is. So I'll see you in the morning. Alright guys, we're back this morning to check and see the results. We're checking the durability and the quality of the resin casting in our custom made silicone molds. If you want to figure out how to make them, go ahead and look at my earlier video. You can find it on the playlist. And I was happy to find you guys that they turned out pretty well. So let's start with the cornstarch and silicone. We colored these blue. It's coming out pretty well. The mold's still intact, still just as durable. It's a little thin on the bottom, but it's not broken. And it looks like some of the silicone transferred over onto this. So I'm not super impressed by that, but you can really feel the detail from the seashell that I used. If you remember, we had this seashell, and if we compare them side by side, it's really pretty similar. I'm impressed. So the only negative on this one is that the mold stuck to the resin. Otherwise, it's pretty good. Let's check the soap and water in silicone. Now this one comes out a little bit easier. I didn't have to really work hard for it. And the mold's intact. No holes. This one turned out really good. It didn't stick to it. You can really feel the detail. I think that one is the better of the two. And then let's try this one. This is the cornstarch, the circle. Let's pull this out and see what it looks like. Oh, this is already not doing well. Half of it has broken. I imagine this could be fixed because it literally just broke where the resin touched the clay. So there must not have been a good solid connection there. This isn't lost though. With some resin, I could just paint it on there and seal that back up. And it's pretty cool looking. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe I would put less clay in so that the resin could work around it next time. All in all, I think it turned out pretty well. And it came out really easy. The mold's still intact on this one too. Still durable. Let's do soap and water. Same thing, just a circle. Well, that one was easy to get out. This one came out all in one piece also. And if you remember from our last, when we were pouring the resin, we put less clay in this, so you can see that it actually encased the clay versus the clay being by itself. And I think that's the difference. This one turned out really cool. You can see the flowers in it. I think that the likeness is very similar. So the soap and water was definitely the winner on that one. Next, we've got our dragonflies. The dragonfly, this one's kind of popping out of there already, so this one almost pushed it right out. Came out pretty easy. This isn't bad. The green color that we used for our dragonfly wings didn't really come through very well, but that's because we didn't use a lot of food coloring. The mold's still intact. Sturdy. And the likeness is very similar. Let's check the soap and water. The details really came through on the both of them. I don't know if you can see that. You can see the wings and the tail. Now let's check the key. This one was one I was a little bit worried about just because it's got such small details. It came out really easy from the mold. The mold's still intact. No holes, nothing like that. And you can see it. You can see the little keyhole on it. But the end up here, you can't really see where the key part is. Just a little bit. We've got this one this one. Turned out really well. Let's check the soap and water. Mold is good. Came out very easily. This one looks a little bit misshapen, but it could have been how we pushed the key down in the mold originally, and these are custom molds. But it turned out pretty well. The keyhole came through really clearly on this one. And the end is also pretty clear, the detail. Now these ones I was kind of worried about also, this one in particular, because if you'll notice, by the time we got to pushing the mold together, it was already set, and so it didn't want to stick together very well, and it left a gap right there. But it looks like it held the resin in there pretty well. Let's see. Oh, that one's not ready to come out. Okay, we've got a little bit of the mold stuck to it right here, which seems to be the case with the cornstarch molds. I would say that's a definite detractor, but it turned out a lot better than I thought. I kind of like the rough edges, and it's definitely got a matte surface. I think that's to do with the cornstarch also, versus having a shinier surface, but it didn't turn out very bad. This is the rock that I used for the mold. I say that's a win. This one, water, mold of course is good. And this one is definitely a lot clearer. You can see that it's shiny. This one came out a lot better. Details came through really well also. So all in all, guys, I'd say that the cornstarch, although they came out really well, the molds were pretty sturdy, and I mean, they worked. They released the item well, because remember, we didn't use a mold release, a silicone release. I think that the cornstarch wouldn't be my first choice unless I didn't have anything else on hand to use. The soap and water was by far more fun. The molds turned out better. The quality was better of the resin casting, and they released better. So I think this one is going to go to the soap and water. Thanks for watching, guys. I have other videos on the way. We'll see what other fun projects that I've got. I'll always like and subscribe the videos and stay tuned for next time. Thank you.